What's up, guys? Got a little different video here for you today. I wasn't going to do this one, but a couple of people had reached out to me, and now several people have reached out to me just asking me about how I do the hand cutting. So I have a process I've used for a long time. I was a professional framer for decades and came up with all kinds of different techniques for different things, and one of them was hand cut items. But like in baseball cards, you know, cutting out cards from uncut sheets or from cereal boxes or any number of different things. Yeah, I use a similar method now to cut things out of sporting news like we've been talking about. A little different because they're super thin, so you really have to be careful on these, but you need to start with a solid table surface and some good lighting. That's the first thing. Then you need to get one of these cutting mats. You can probably get this in the craft section at Walmart, or any craft store will have these, but these will serve as your underlay for whatever you're cutting. Okay, now I have it set up on this right now, but normally, you know, I'd be sitting at a kitchen table or something stable, but for viewing purposes I'm just doing it here on the stage. But get you some good lighting, make sure you can see everything really well. Get you one of these cutting mats. They last a pretty good amount of time, but they do get a lot of cuts in them over time, and you probably want to replace them. For stuff like those Ryans, you know, where it's kind of almost a once in a lifetime shot, I try to avoid any spot in here that has cuts already. But normally you don't have to go that far. You can just kind of cut right through it. But you need one of these for the base. You need a metal ruler with a perfectly smooth edge. You don't want to use a plastic because the razor can just dig into it and then you ruin your project. So you want metal, but you also don't want to be laying this directly on your cards or anything like that. Like this sporting news, you don't want to put it right on your subject where it could actually mark it up. So this would stay to the outside while you're doing your cutting, but you want the metal ruler. Then you can use any kind of razor. Mat cutting razors are the best, but you can use these, just standard razor, where you get one, you know, you get two chances out of one with two corners there. So you just take the peel off there, of course. But that's where I start on this. We are going to cut out a Mickey Mantle for my boy Keith over at the Lonely Basement Baseball Cards today. So we're going to use this one as our subject. Now it comes with a nice little article here. So what I do is, you don't want to be messing around with this whole clunky magazine the whole time as you're working this around trying to cut it. So I always get a smaller portion, so you can work with that and spin it around and do that much easier. If you're working with uncut sheets and stuff, it's a little different. If you're working with cards that are side by side and you don't want to mess up this one, I lay a single ply Kleenex underneath tissue, and you can set this down on top of the other card without hurting it. But in this case, we're going to go outside the line, so we're not going to be hurting anything in this case, because we're just going to keep turning this and keeping the ruler on the outside. But I want to get a bigger area here cut so we can work with that. So what I would do is take this thing, just put this behind the only page that you're going to be messing with, so it won't cut the rest of the magazine up. And then you can just get you this cut out a little bit. Just have an easier thing to work with. We're not too concerned at this point because we're not actually cutting out our, you know, potentially valuable piece. So that's where we want to start. We'll start with that being our subject with the Mick 1966 Mickey Mantle with a Keith. And then got to figure out the borders. So now this does have his name under, which is great. So we're going to be cutting out under the name. The sides have more space than this P. So typically I would cut out this portion first, and you can decide if you want wider borders just to get them as big as possible, or if you want borders that match the top so it's kind of the same all the way around. Now you can measure, you know, get you an 1/8 inch or whatever it is and measure and make your marks if you want. I typically don't do that because when you're cutting, I don't want half of those marks or a portion of those marks still showing. And I certainly don't want to get, you know, an eraser going on this kind of stuff. You want it to just be clean and perfect the first time. Now these kind of things you can use each corner, but let's just pretend this is a Nolan Ryan. Let's pretend this is something, let's just pretend it's a valuable card that you're trying to cut out. I use a new one for every one. These are literally pennies, and if you're dealing with something that's valuable or irreplaceable, let's just pretend this is, I use a brand new razor each time. It's not even worth having a bad cut. Now, I would definitely practice this on a bunch of these kind of things that you don't want to keep, that aren't important to you. First, just because of the pressure. You don't want to have too much pressure on this razor because it'll make a rough cut, and you don't want to have too little because then you got to pull the paper apart, and it's not good either. So you want to get the perfect pressure down, and until you've done it a few times and you understand exactly how you want it to be, there's no way to do it other than practice. But this just allows you to be able to turn this however you want. Just have a smaller thing to work with. Like I said, if this was super important, something, you know, thousands of dollars or something that you were trying to cut out of old Wheaties box or something, whatever, I would be avoiding the cuts here. I would find a smooth portion of this that hasn't been cut underneath. But in this case, we don't need to do that. But I don't make marks. I just get it to visually be where I want it to be. Make it as big as we can without exposing any of that bottom portion of that letter P. And then you don't want to start at your corner. You want to start at a good inch past and then go an inch past. You don't want to start cutting and stop cutting kind of where your card is going to be. Okay? You want to have a smooth cut. You don't want to ever stop and start within there. You want to have a nice smooth cut. You want to put pressure, thumb and index, you want to put pretty good pressure there. Make sure your ruler is not going to move, because then you'll end up with a crooked cut. But we've made that cut at the top. Another thing, of course, wash your hands. Make sure there's no moisture. Make sure if you do wash your hands, you don't leave any water on there or anything, because that will just damage what you're working on. So we kind of know what the border at the top is going to look like, and of course you can take a lot more time on this trying to get your borders perfect and however wide you want them. Just make sure they're straight, not crooked, and all that kind of stuff. Then once again, you're going to start above, go all the way past. Like I said, I would be switching out a brand new razor, or at least flipping it to the other corner first. Then we got the bottom, which is going to be the unique side on this. It's got the name. So you want to make sure this lines up nice and straight. And give it however much room you want under that name before you start getting to the text. But of course, all this applies different on different things you're cutting out. But apply good pressure with your fingers. Start way over here, finish smooth way over here, and then you got 3 sides cut out. So this thing is obviously very, very thin and very delicate. So then you got that, and then you got your last cut. Now the thing about this is once you start cutting your last cut, this is kind of all going to be free and there's no other paper holding it. So I have a technique I do on that as well, where once you start cutting it, let's see which one we've used. When you start cutting it, you don't want to stop in the middle and start again, but you also don't want to just keep doing it like before. You could actually drag it and wrinkle it. So you're going to bring this finger over. You're holding all this down with these 2 fingers. You're going to bring your index over and hold this as you pass it. But you don't want to go here and then stop and then put your finger and pass it. You got to do it kind of all in one smooth move. So get your border how you want it. I'm going to start up here. Do it smooth, and then you want to hold this just to make sure that doesn't come over and wrinkle. So there you go. We got the article. We got the Mick ready to go to the lonely basement. And you got you a real nice cut, real nice card of 1966 Mickey Mantle right there. So that's how I do it. And like I said, you can, if you're not making a video, you can take more time, although this did come out perfect. And then what I use on the real ones, I use these Ultra Pro. They are kind of expensive. Not many people buy these anymore, but you got to get the non-recessed kind when you're dealing with just paper. When you're dealing with cardstock, you can get the recessed kind. It's a different story, even if it's a hand cut. Now these aren't standard size. These are a little bit taller than a normal card, but they're not as wide. but they work in between the screws here. They fit. So that's what I use on these. if you're actually going to protect one. But you can also slip this into a semi-rigid. Now you don't want to just pinch it at the top and shove it down. You will wrinkle these things bad. But if you do it right, you know how to open up a semi-rigid to put one of these kind of things in, then you can do it just fine. But that's an easier way to do it. So if you were going to cut out a bunch of stuff that's not super valuable, use a semi-rigid. If you're going to have something like those Ryans, you know, I suggest these. These are a good size for this kind of thing. But whether this was a Wheaties box panel or any kind of panel, or you know, cutting out cards from an uncut sheet, whatever, this is the method I use. And I've been doing this kind of thing a long time. I do have a steady hand. If you don't, you know, maybe you don't want to mess with that kind of stuff. I don't know. But people have been asking me. The reason I don't use scissors, those are not good for this kind of thing. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be up here freehanding it. You certainly don't want to use a paper cutter, because those can shift and you can end up with a curved cut, or even really, really bad and cut into your project. But this, if you do it properly, like I've said here, this isn't going to have a problem. You'll have a nice clean cut. You'll be able to do it nice and even. Once again, we're not laying the ruler on the subject. We're laying it over to the side and spinning it. So you have no issues with this kind of thing. And you just put it in a holder and enjoy it. So that's it, guys. Just several people have asked me how I hand cut things. I've been doing this kind of thing a long, long time. That's how I do it. It's the best method. It's the most foolproof method. It's the way to come out, you know, your project to come out as perfect as possible. But yeah, just kind of any kind of standard razor like this. Just use new ones every single time. Don't use a dull old razor. These, if you need them, just get you a cutting mat, metal ruler, and have fun. So that's it, guys. Appreciate it. Hope that helps. Take care.